Hey, this is Todd of Hexed Press. I'm here with Alan of Chronicles of Ember and Pex. I don't know. I always use Pex, but I don't know. Should I use your real name or you like your nom de guerre, internet nom de guerre of Pex, working with the Frog Gods? Alan, why don't you give your intro and feel free to drop links to all your stuff in the chat, and then Pex can go, and then we can figure out what to talk about and get this thing going.
All right, well, that sounds like a winner to me. My name is Alan, and I am the guy who writes and produces the Chronicles of Ember tabletop RPG. It's a D&D-alike, but everything has gone wrong. There are cute, fuzzy animals ripping each other to shreds inside a blizzard, and you know you want to play this. It's like Watership Down with weapons. Great stuff. It's something that it's the kind of game I've always wanted to play, and so I had to make it because there wasn't one. And I think that if you give it a fair shake, you're going to like it too. Let me go ahead and drop all my stuff here. Copy pasta, and pasta has been copied. And there it is. Thrown up, waiting for things to populate. Just a lot of links. Oh, there we go. And I think that's really all the intro that I've got right now. If you do want to check it out, you've got... you can catch me at any of these links at chroniclesofember.com. You can also find us on Facebook. I have a Twitter page that I actually pay attention to once a month, and I should be doing better. And a few other random places around the internet. So, hey, I am caffeinated. You're absolutely right, son. And I am going to go ahead and throw it back to you.
All right, Pex, you here? You're up.
Hello, I am Pex, or John Barnhouse. I guess inside of the mailroom I can use my real name. I am the online marketing and online platforms director for Frog God Games, Necromancer Games, and 3D Printcraft, because apparently I can't find enough work for myself. And we have a Kickstarter going on right now for Frog God Games. Put a link in chat for that. It's the Swords and Wizardry box set. You can also feel free to give us a like on Facebook, because Facebook is where all the cool kids hang out.
Awesome. There actually are pretty good role-playing game groups on Facebook. I find it's pretty much the only thing that keeps me on there. I'm Todd. I write and talk about video games. Hexed Press. I'm also on Facebook, Patreon, Twitter, YouTube. I will probably drop my Patreon link in there, not to push people towards that, but just because that's where everything gets consolidated. And probably the only reason I'm still on Facebook is that there are pretty good game groups, and I have a page on there. And there's also a calendar of events for the Breakfast Club that I'm not actually that good at updating, but if you want to get reminders when they're on, you can get pinged there if you're on Facebook. So before I turned on the recorder, we were talking about, I guess, kind of some of the technical nitty gritty of streams. Pex, do you watch any streams? I mean, I know when I talked to Matt Finch, I used to watch his recorded streams of his Swords and Wizardry game. You ever check out any streams? Like them, dislike them, find them boring? What's your take
on streams in general? Yeah, absolutely.
Like RPG, RPG streams, like the like Matt Finch's streams, or Adam Coble, or Matt Colville, or obviously Critical Role being the giant elephant in the room. Any of those? Any other ones? I know there's a ton of ones in audio and video form. I just rattled off a couple.
Yeah, I'm mainly a video guy versus a podcast guy, just because I'm more visual oriented. But I love podcasts as well. But for some other ones, I've been watching A Fistful of Dice for years. Very low key guy, doesn't have many subscribers, but I find his info that he does fantastic. I'm also a Mystara fanboy, so Mr. Welch is also another one if you're into the Mystara setting. Recently, I found Babies with Knives that I recently got mad onto, but I've been going through their stuff, and it's really solid. Are
these actual plays, or are these guys chatting about the game?
A Fistful of Dice is more of your information or how-to. Babies with Knives is all over the place. They do how-tos, let's plays, interviews. Dawnforge cast I watched back in my Pathfinder days that I try to forget, but I did play a bit of Pathfinder for a while, so I watched his videos extensively. I watched Matt Finch RPG Studio as well, and then Mr. Welch is more of a historical facts of Mystara kind of series.
So San Tagoy, I don't know if I got that. I asked if in there TechML podcast. I don't know if there's any TechML. That's definitely a topic. I actually have some of the pedals of the. No wait, why am I mixing that up? What Emperor of the Petal Throne? Right, that's the actual RPG name. Something like that. Sorry, I'm spacing out on it this morning, but yeah, I would love to see TechML's stuff. And he listened about it because I owning the books, and I've always been intrigued by the lore, but I actually haven't read too deeply into it. So it's one of those subjects. So back onto some of the ones that you like, Pex. What is it? You said you're visual. Do you like the ones with all the bells and whistles? I know that some of them have all the cool kind of Roll20 sort of overlay kind of things. I see Matt Colville, and then some of those, and I guess Acquisitions Incorporated and Critical Role, they have kind of nice overlays. Or is it more you like seeing the kind of table stuff, like maybe the miniatures in Matt Finch's case, or kind of the more of the view of just what's literally on the table as opposed to the sort of more, I guess, advanced digital representational graphics and whatnot?
It's not so much the graphics for me, honestly. It's more well, it's going to sound lame, but it's more of the information that I find valuable. It's just like finding a good blog that has just good articles of info and facts and stuff. That's more up my alley, especially with Fistful of Dice, Dawnforged, and Mr. Welch. They're all more fact-based, and the only graphics they honestly do are more like your bullet point of these are the topics I'm covering for the day, or these are the subjects we do, kind of like we post in the Breakfast Club and Coast to Coast, and like, oh, that's an interesting topic. I want to watch or listen or read about that.
Gotcha. What about you, Alan? Is there anything? Obviously, we were talking before about you kind of looking at or working on producing your own kind of actual play podcasts and how to do that. But do you listen or watch any at the moment?
Really, I don't. I've never actually listened in on another person's podcast, especially a game podcast, up to this point. So I don't really know what I'm doing very well. I've started playing with it, and I've been checking up on YouTube. Well, how do you do these things? How do you add structure to your podcast? How do you do X, Y, and Z? But as far as actually experiencing them, I am not the guy you should probably be asking about how to do these things, because I'm just kind of flying by the seat of my pants, and I'm doing as well as I'm doing right now. Exactly. I can give facts and opinions and mostly opinions, very few facts. I should probably start checking into other things. And I would like some good recommendations on what you guys think are worthwhile listens. Try to model myself after that,
Yeah, there's a lot of different styles. It's definitely worth listening to other people's or watching them just to get an idea of what other people are doing and what works, what you like, and that sort of thing. Like the stuff that I do is mostly opinion based, where I get some kind of factoids thrown in there when applicable. I don't, the thing is for me, that's maybe a good or a bad thing depending on where you come from, is I just at the moment either I can't write myself good enough scripts, or I'm just not good at reading them. But I found when I tried doing kind of writing everything in a scripted form, I just felt like I was very stilted in my delivery.
Yeah, I understand that to be a thing you have to kind of grow into. Again, these are opinions that I have heard from other people who claim to have done this and have met with success. So I don't. I'm gonna let you take that with a grain of salt. But
oh no, I'm sure it's definitely something that you have to practice and keep doing. And some of it is, I think, finding your natural voice and kind of being able to get the kind of a tone and sort of rhythm that you want. I think editing helps a lot, and you'll see ones. You can watch it if you. It's harder to tell if you're just listening to them, but definitely when you watch them, you see where those little kind of jagged cuts, they've clipped out some stuff. And you see that a lot. I mean, and it makes sense, because I think that the one thing I'm always trying to look for, is finding somebody locally that I could sort of collaborate with as far as, hey, I could help you film and do your stuff and you can help me film and do my stuff, because everything's more difficult when you're doing it as a one-man band like I'm doing.
Yeah. I totally feel your pain, man. The best advice that I've had for doing any kind of writing and rhetoric came, of all people, from Mark Twain. And he didn't say it exactly, but there was a thing when I was in school I had to read about, he had this little speech that he was going to give. And he had originally written it for something that you're going to read. It's not going to be something you get up and do. But whenever he changed format and he had to deliver this, he said that he could not read this verbatim because it was not written for that format, and you could tell. Also, writing things for somebody else's voice. If you have something that's not written for your voice and you're trying to do this, it's going to sound like a train wreck because it never was supposed to come out of the instrument, which is you. And, there's a reason they don't play symphonies with banjos. Well, okay, there's a lot of reasons that they don't do symphony orchestras with banjos, but I think I think you understand what I mean. So writing, and these, Pex, you are on point. So help me God, you are on point every single time. He has just placed the most wonderful thing in the RPG Breakfast Club chat when I mentioned banjos. Yeah, the getting stuff organized for your voice and getting it out there. It's like flavor text for an RPG. We've all seen these. If you've ever ran a game, you get a.
I was about to segue in there, so you read my mind.
Hey, man, you get. I'm going through this crap right now, and you look at that flavor text, and it says read or paraphrase this to your players. My God, always paraphrase this to your players, because if you read it verbatim, it sounds awful. It just sounds awful, but it doesn't suck when you're actually reading it to yourself. Usually.
No, it's very true. I go back and forth on the flavor text thing. I'm working on a couple things myself, and then I've decided for at least one of them, I'm going to try something different and not use the standard flavor text, because I wonder how many people in real play, because I know I never did, would read the flavor text out, and it's weird. And the other thing too is like the flavor text can't integrate all these different things that may happen. So if my players succeeded on a listen check and the flavor text is going to have the big gotcha of something at the end of it, but I know they've already heard the thing moving around before they open the door and they're ready for it, then the flavor text just doesn't match up with what has actually happened in the game. Like I read through and I know, okay, there's an orc hiding behind this place, but I know the players have already pinpointed that there's an orc hiding behind there. So the flavor text has this thing where it's going to give you this whole tension buildup of then the orc going, aha, and jumping out. And the player's like, yeah, we know he's there already. We're watching him right now. It's like, well,
Yeah, I've had one even worse. So there was this vampire creature that was supposed to be a gotcha, a skeleton that starts suddenly growing organs and flesh and muscles, and he's ready to go and do this. Well, that's what the flavor text said to do. Unfortunately, one of the players had already jumped on this skeleton and rammed 2 short swords straight up underneath his chin to protrude from his skull, and was scissoring them together as he was coming together. And sure enough, the game master was new and didn't know what to do, so went ahead and just read the flavor text saying that all this happens anyway, and wahaha. And we're all sitting around asking, well, what about those 2 swords in his nervous system? Does that not come into play? Did we not win at that point? And it's you can get some comedy out.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean it's they. I get the necessity for them in some ways, but yeah, you end up almost like it breeds people to just kind of go through by rote and not maybe get more in the improv sense of. Like what I've thought about with my own structure is maybe trying to highlight here are the kind of 5 senses type things that are going on. What do you see, what do you hear, what do you kind of smell, what kind of things around, and then tell you sort of what's in the room and about where they are, and then let you read through that. And so you can know, okay, there's a skeleton over here. And if the players jump to it or do something else that negates that skeleton being there, then you don't need to go ahead and read it. You've already gotten that. And then you can kind of make your own flavor text from those notes, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, flavor text has got to be there for a reason. I mean, they wouldn't have put that in all those years ago. I think this was a staple from back in the very earliest days of tabletop. I don't know that for sure, but I just have this feeling that it's always been there. And
I imagine it must the less you prepare, right, the more that those things like flavor text probably are helpful.
Yeah, well, if you get somebody who's got a lot of experience, they're most likely, I assume, not going to read the flavor text as written. They're going to say, okay, here's what we've got. This is the encounter. I've actually read the adventure. Who does that anymore? And then they'll put that into play. But if you have a new group, that really aren't too sure of themselves, and they roll dice, flip a coin, draw straws, or whatever, and decide that Bobby is going to be the guy running the game today, whether he likes it or not. Here you go. Let's do this. The flavor text, it does serve a role, and it may be a stilted and janky role, but I think that it probably needs to be there for those players anyway.
I mean, beyond what's in the room, like dimensions and furniture and crap, I find any kind of flavor text.
Pex, we lost you.
Is altered. Oh, did I drop out?
Yep.
Yeah, you had that little thing where it, you all of a sudden just kind of fade away in the middle of your sentence.
And do that. That robot fade.
I shall start again. Yes, flavor text, box text. I find anything beyond room dimensions, furniture, and crap, anything involves like speech, smell, or any of the senses, like Todd was saying, that just gets altered during play. Sometimes it doesn't. You could just go with it. But most of the time, the players, they're on paranoia train, and they're asking questions before they even turn the knob on the door.
Right.
And so you kind of have to alter and go with it. I mean, it's a good placeholder for, like you're saying, for newer players or for, I'm trying to think of a good scenario.
I mean, con play, right? Uniform.
Cons,
You want everybody to be working off the same thing. You want there to be basically a sense of, if you're running this module, that you're getting kind of the same experience at all the different tables. So the box text kind of gives you another way of getting a ideal uniform experience. So yeah, I think for those, there's some good use cases.
Right. Try to decide if I would want them out in the long term. I don't know if I do. I kind of like giving it as a base and working from the base when I'm altering it or playing with it. So I think it's good to keep in, I guess. Mainly because I'm used to it and I don't like change. No one likes change.
Well, I think I have come up with a solution for the box text thing. In addition to having the box text, my adventures, and I actually have adventures, really, it's true. These adventures have bullet points above the box text. Whenever you have an encounter, here's the title of the encounter, and then you have 3 bullet points that serves to bring the game master up to speed on exactly what's going on. And then you can sort of jam off of that if you need to without having to read the box text if you don't want. And it gives you a nice little capsule instead of going through and having to, hold on, guys, I need to read this encounter again to figure out exactly what happens, blah, blah, blah. And I think we've all seen that. I know I'm guilty of it. And I got sick of being guilty of it, so I tried to fix it with these little sets of bullet points. And maybe that would be more, more useful, more comfortable for old hat GMs who've been playing since God was a little boy. And they don't want to read box text anymore.
No one cares about grognards. Kidding, grognards, we care about you. But no, I think that's a good point, because you kind of gave me an idea here. Maybe having the box text for as is, and then a separate blank box for you to fill in your own notes or box text yourself. I think would be kind of cool to see. But again, page count, layout.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, Datum's here. Page count is one of those things that I'm worried about. I'm not too sure. The more pages you have, the more money it costs you to make. And now we're getting into letting the bean counters decide exactly who's going to be doing what. And I'm not looking forward to that being a problem.
It's not as much of an issue on the digital front, right? And in some ways, page count can be your friend from a marketing standpoint. If you say over 50 pages worth of classes, but yeah, definitely from a print standpoint, there's all kinds of calculus that goes into page count, printing, and that kind of thing.
Well, I don't know if it's considered gauche to do, but you figure, you have to factor page count into final cost and then your profit margin. And are people going to pay another $2 for these extra 25 to 30 pages? Can we sneak that in there? Is that too much? Am I going to look like the money grubbing jerk that I am if I if I actually jack my prices up to accommodate this. How much is too much? We're into the Bethesda horse armor thing all over again.
That's why they gave us the blank pages in the back of the book, right? No. There's a different reason for that, actually. Yeah. Put your notes here.
Yep, and we can't divide by 4, so here you go.
Math's hard.
Yeah, the one thing I will say from a print standpoint, I ran across something, just please, people, when you're laying out your adventures, put the box text at least, if not the very top of the page of where you have the section on a given room near the top, because it does no use to have the box text at the very bottom of a room description, potentially on another page, potentially where the GM's not going to see it, and then have to scramble to figure out what to say, only to get to the bottom of the whole thing, and then see that, oh, there's the box text that I needed 10 minutes ago when I first had to find the stuff about the room.
Yeah, I think you should go in and, just like they taught you when you were a little bitty kid, you tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them, and then maybe tell them what you told them at the end, or for wrapping up that particular encounter. It's the method that I'm trying to use, and it works as well as it does. So if anybody's got a better idea, I can be trained.
I don't, though. I do think that I think it was the Tomb of the Serpent Kings has a really good layout for rooms. It's kind of a free. I don't think they offer a print version. You just have to print out yourself. But theirs is really good. Not just the box text, but they also have, for example, little mini maps of kind of the cluster of rooms on a given spread. They have like a little zoom in, so you could kind of see where you are without having to necessarily look at a bigger, flip back and forth to a bigger map, because it'll have kind of where you are in the page next to the rooms. I think I know that the guy continually kind of tweaks it and improves it, but it is really I feel like from a usability standpoint, the way it's laid out, it's really, really nice.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
No, you. Mine's long.
Okay, well, maybe mine will be too. Let's see. One of the design principles that I try to go by is I don't want you to play hide and seek through 15 books to be able to find the information that you want for an encounter that should be laid out right in front of you. I want to give you all of your monster information, all the stuff that you need that is relevant and pertinent to what's going on right now on 1 or 2 pages right in front of you. And it does increase the adventure length a little bit to do so, but I write these things primarily for myself, and this is what I would want to see when I was doing this. Have I bought the adventure? Well, there it is. I've got all I need. And wouldn't that just be great? But then you get the bean counters, I'm sure, at some point telling you, no, we must sell more books. We can't do the thing that you're trying to do. And that's half a joke. You may laugh or groan as necessary or appropriate. You figure it out. You do you.
Yeah, plus there's licensing things too, I think, as far as if you're doing something for 5th edition, I'm not sure exactly how it works for monsters. I'm not in the open game license. Either you just can't mention them, or you can put, maybe if it's DM's Guild, you can put you can't put the actual description in there, but I think you can reference the book where it is. So some of that's not necessarily up to the authors, but certainly with your own content, I always like it that, if I can have everything I need right here and I don't have to go flip back and forth between the back of the book, which is even worse when it's a digital PDF, because you can't, put your finger on the physical page where the encounter flip back. You have to bookmark it or somehow remember, and then go forward in the PDF and then go back to where you were. So I feel like it's even more important with digital versions of books to have everything as much as possible kind of right there in front of your eyes, either on your laptop or, on your tablet, or however you're, ingesting the stuff.
Yeah, it's still weird to me having the digital element brought to the table with people with their devices and whatnot, because I'm old. I'm used to having books and dead trees everywhere and a big stack of smelly, decomposing wood over here that I'm looking through trying to find things. For what it's worth, let you guys know as a public service announcement, all of my future releases will be printed with poisonous water-soluble ink.
Yeah. But PDFs, there's a lot of things you can do. I mean, beyond the bookmarking, you could actually link text to text. So you literally click on that thing that's referencing the back of the book. It could take you there. And then vice versa. It can take you back. And that requires a layout person to A, know what they're doing, B, want to spend the enormous amount of time that does take. But we have the technology to do that. And I think, well, maybe now that you all know about it, supply and demand will take over and it'll become common practice soon. Well, not soon, because like I said, no one likes change. And even links to websites within PDFs will redirect you to the website. And so, yeah, there's a lot of snazzy things we can do with PDFs that, well, to be honest, it's just a lot of work, and we kind of choose not to sometimes. But I know over at Frogs here, we're trying to get better at that. And with accessibility, too, which is a whole different ballgame, which is a whole different topic. So I will hold off on that.
Yeah, I kind of think that, I don't know if PDFs, I'm not going to say they have their days numbered, but I almost feel like that kind of app, Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, insert your kind of app of choice is going to sort of bypass people. I mean, it's kind of reminds me of Blu-ray. Like I got to go see Blu-rays when they were in their sort of proto form before they'd come out, and we got this run through of all the stuff that you could do with Blu-rays, and you could do amazing things. And it's funny, every time I look at Blu-rays, like they just put less and less work into them. Like the best Blu-rays as far as using as much as of the actual Blu-ray tech as they could, and they never got around to using all. We're at the beginning when it was new. Now nobody gives anything about what's on your Blu-ray because digital delivery systems have just surpassed it. And I kind of think that all this stuff with PDFs, yeah, it's great. It does take a lot of work. It takes the kind of know-how, but it's just like, I think people are going to put their energy and effort into either integrating with existing services and apps, or, creating their own apps to do that.
I mean, it's like anything. Photoshop can do everything under the sun, right? Do we use all the tools of Photoshop for everything? No.
I don't know that there's any one person that knows all the tools for Photoshop. There's just so much there. And yeah, we're going to take the parts that we like, and we always find out about something new that we never knew that this piece of software could do before. And, oh yeah, man, that would have been great to know 6 months ago when I needed it.
Yeah. Hey, Pex, I do want to hear about the accessibility stuff because I'm really interested in that. What kind of initiatives are over at the Frog Gods as far as accessibility?
Well, we just partnered with an accessibility nonprofit called Dots RPG. They make 3D printed Braille dice at the moment, but they're trying to partner with a lot of people in the industry for getting readers for PDFs. Because the main issue there is it goes back to layout. Honestly, it doesn't translate well on the readers. It skips around, especially when it comes to images. And as we were going over box text, you know how we just have simple creatures for monsters and very little description about those these days? Well, part of it is embedding the description into the image itself for the reader, for the people that have visual problems. And that's a fascinating thing to me. Like, you don't even have to alter the layout of the PDF other than embedding it into the image, and the reader just picks it up. I find that kind of stuff fascinating. But even more detailed, because we ooh and ah over cool pictures, right? Well, the more detail or words you put in there, the more descriptive it is to the people that are visually impaired. And it, like I said, it'll skip around. Like, if you don't do an accessibility PDF, it'll skip around for them. And sometimes you get garbly-gook, like with bolding and italics. These be formatted a certain way and spaced a certain way. But it's just a little bit more work for a lot more game for a lot more players. And that's just the visually impaired stuff. We're looking into other stuff for other kind of disabilities that we can help improve the game for. And I don't. There's very few. Well, I want to say it's a market that we should have been paying attention to from the get-go, and I'm sad that we haven't. But now that stuff is being brought to our attention, we're going to try to do a lot better with that. And I'd like to see the market as a whole kind of trend toward that, making games for everyone, right? Just a little more work. But yeah, that's a hard sell.
Yeah, for sure. I know the images thing, that's very similar. It's pretty much the same as on the web in general, using alt tags and using longer descriptive text options to add stuff for readers. I didn't realize even that you could do that for that metadata had some kind of entry, and that you could add that for images in layout programs. So that's really good that you can do it, and it's good on the frogs for kind of trying to get into it, because there's probably a ton of people who could use that, and I just can't imagine myself if you had to put up with a book that you couldn't get through in a linear fashion to make sense of, because it was all scrambling up and jumbling around on you.
Right, and they're also trying to do Braille books, the company Dots, that is, and they're not making it for mass market production. No one's going to have their own set of Braille books in their home. I'm sorry. The reason for that is, if you're not familiar, and I didn't know myself until they showed me, is Braille books, compared to what we use for us sighted people, or 10 times, and that may be a kind low number, bigger than a book that we are used to, just because of the way Braille works. So they're actually donating things to like libraries or group organizations like that, the Braille copies, because they want to get them out there, because people still use Braille or may not have access to readers, and because readers are expensive, they cost money. But yeah, I saw one for the first time, and compared to what I would use, and it was like, well, damn. That looks expensive. And she said, yes, it is.
Yeah, for sure. Datum threw in there in the chat that he was talking to VB Word of Elthos fame about, I guess about, well, he says, let me just say, he says about this. I was trying to figure out what this was referenced to, but I guess about this general topic of maybe layout and stuff. And he's saying our core demographic is generally creative, resourceful, industrious. How do you give value to that market? It's a really non-specific comment, so I'm more than happy to talk about it more. Yeah, I mean, so I don't know. Obviously, I'm not someone who has published a bunch of books as of yet on this thing. I think you can. I mean, I think the best thing to do is really you can go to Kickstarter, frankly, and just look at the projects that just explode on Kickstarter, and you could kind of see the things that appeal to people. When I look at board games, all the board games that do really well on Kickstarter, it's just tons of minis. People just get all in love with having a bunch of physical minis in these giant boxes the size of steamer trunks that are just filled with minis. As far as the kind of things that I look for me, like I like reading settings. I don't ever use them because I just always get caught in wanting to do my own thing. But I look for what kind of stuff basically can I steal? What kind of great ideas? What kind of great mechanics? What kind of great, this thing has great tables of encounters, so I can use that. This kind of things has that. So if I was looking at a product from the outside, if I could flip through it in a bookstore, that's the kind of thing that I'm looking for myself. What kind of resources can I grab from this? Bits and pieces that I like. Is it seem like it's easy? Does it seem like it's written in an engaging way? I think art can sometimes play a role. I try not to pay too much attention to the art, because after the first time I look at it, I'm probably not going to look at it that much. But obviously art is a big deal. It seems like across the board. But those are the kind of things I look for. Pex, Alan, what do you guys kind of look for when you're looking at products as far as what you want to support, or if you feel like you're something you want to throw money at? What kind of things appeal to you?
Quality. I want something that's done. I mean, it can be good on mine, a little bit more dressed up. So I look for, the ooh-ah pieces, like people look for minis, but more so for there we go. More so for like special handouts, or I'm trying to put it into words. Beyond the book, things that enhance either the book quality, like gold leafing or a ribbon in the book, things like that. But what I really get excited for, or like things like what Beetle Grimm does, those kind of stuff, I think enhances the gameplay. I'm a fan of it personally, but not for everyone.
Whenever I find things, what I look for when I find Alan EXE has crashed and must shut down. Okay, hold on. All right. Whenever I look at new products, The things I'm looking for are cool ideas that somebody has spent a lot of time implementing that I can use, that I don't have time to implement myself. Let me steal this for right now. Like, weather tables are a good idea. Certain new spins on encounter tables, mechanics that I can pick up and run with. Are there any ideas that I could put my own spin on and steal wholesale and start using immediately? I don't really care as much about the artwork that's used, or the packaging, or whether or not it comes with a bunch of little bitty gotta have them toys or minis and whatnot, because those are just things that I'm going to lose at some point. But yeah, it's things that I can use that will make my game better. I'm a total believer in cannibalizing other game systems for what you can use. And if that's all people want to do with my stuff, hey, that's great. I want people to cannibalize my crap if that's going to help them have a better game.
For sure. So, Pex, have you ever bought any of these? Have you bought a Beetle Grimm thing or one of these prop sets?
Yeah, I have the one, like the one I linked just there in chat. And for those that can't see because you're listening to a podcast, basically what these are is, I'm horrible with the name, Nyarlathotep, Call of Cthulhu game. And yeah, I know you're laughing because I said it wrong.
Don't hurt yourself, man.
I know. The newspaper, what they did is the game itself comes with handouts. So what this company did is they took those handouts and they actually used authentic paper or replicated paper of the time period to improve those handouts. So they aren't just generic handouts. These are like souped up handouts with authentic paper, lettering, font, and also included are physical things, like things that the players would be investigating. If you never played a Call of Cthulhu game, it's very investigatory. So things they would have to analyze or puzzle solving, they have a physical handout for that, or the puzzle itself. I find it adds to that immersion aspect a little bit more. And I'm not knocking Theater of the Mind at all when I'm oohing and awing over this. Theater of the Mind's perfectly fine. You may get more out of it or mileage out of it. Good. Different strokes, different folks. But for me, in my tables, I like the physical stuff a bit more, as I found that for us, all the positive things I just mentioned are there. And people get immersed, people ooh and ah over that. This is so cool. I can't believe I'm holding this in my hand. Or, oh, I really like the way this feels. I had no idea, because what I was thinking was totally different.
Absolutely. I mean, it really puts the theatrical, in that theater. And I don't think it's necessarily anti-Theater of the Mind. There's nothing that says that just because you're not using minis on a grid that you can't give handouts or other kind of props and things. I'm all for it. I'm interested. Do you run these multiple times? What do you do once the adventure's over and you've got this handouts and stuff? Do you save it for using when you're running con games, or do you sell it? Do you give them away? What's your plan for these things once the initial use is done?
Oh, I keep them for sure, because they don't do very many of these. This one still available. There's another one. They only made like 1,000 copies. It's like the deluxe model of what I just linked, and that's runs you about $1,000, but there's more things in it. Yeah, I'm going to keep them for resellability when in my elder years, honestly, when you have cancer. you need to pay for your hospital bill. Like, shit, you're right, I do.
Well, I don't guess I need this here piece of folded paper anymore. I'll take what you give me.
Here, I'll trade you books for shots, right?
Absolutely. Well, the kind of handouts that I like the best are the ones that actually come with modules and stuff that you can print off yourself. And if you want to go crazy and get yourself some coffee and some printer paper and age it up and then print that on there, that's great. Take an iron to it, make it nasty, make it look like it's been rode hard and put away wet a few times. Those are okay. As long as you can make things easily yourself and give those away, I find that players are really receptive to that. They get this piece of paper that is literally falling apart, that's all of about half a day old, but you can't tell it. And now this is a treasure for them. They've got this. They get to keep it with them. I've seen these people lay these things out and unfold them like they wish they had tweezers to make sure this old map doesn't completely fall apart. And it's something to watch everybody just light up to that. And if it's something like that you can easily make yourself, I think those are the best kind, the reproducible ones that doesn't cost you a lot in the way of time or money to make yourself. As far as buying them from other people, well, the pre-made kind, that can get old fast, and I think Pex is right. You might want to look at that as a retirement plan.
Right, and also there's another factor in these. I mean, I lean to a more extravagant thing than most. With the rise of 3D printing, I mean, printing your own props is becoming more affordable, I would say. They used to be thousands of dollars. You can get a 3D printer now for under $1,000, probably under $600, honestly.
You can get them for about $200.
Right. They've come down, so you can. Oh, yeah. You can if you're a do-it-yourselfer. I'm not, because that's the reason I don't paint my own minis, and that's the reason I don't make my own terrain, and I don't make my own props because I don't have skills for this or the time. But I do have some money to throw at this, so I'll buy things like this. But for 3D printing, I think it's there, and you can. I don't know. Ever wanted to make your own scrolls or potions? What's the difference between a healing potion and a poison potion? Hey, let me print it out and show you.
Yeah. That's probably not the best thing to end with. Yeah. But I'm on board. You're absolutely right. If you can do that sort of thing and you don't mind doing it, if you love the game enough to actually pour yourself into it or throw money at it until the bad problem goes away, then do that, because at the end of the day, what we do is rhetoric and entertainment. That's the business we're in. And if you're not entertaining, well, you're in the wrong business. You need to. I would encourage everybody to step up and just give it that little bit of extra to really magnify the value that the people at your table are getting and the people who are buying your product.
Absolutely. And as Datum pointed out in the chat, he says his perspective is as a performer of RPGs rather than a writer. And yeah, all these things are props. I mentioned, they add a higher theatrical value. And yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it, right? Is you're coming as a group to perform an RPG. So anything that can help you get into character, get into that place is going to add to the fun. And these things seem to definitely do that. And yeah, 3D printing has made it possible. You can do all this stuff yourself, or if you got more time, you got more money than time, then these different services could definitely do it. And not everything is easy to do on your own, and getting aged paper and all that stuff could be a pain. So these guys will just do it for you, which is great.
Yeah, but I mean, if you don't have the time, you need a baking sheet, a sheet of paper, some coffee, and an iron. And don't tell your wife. Tell her you bought it at the store. And you put all these things together just right, and you have wonderful paper that looks aged, that you can smell, and it'll wake you right up.
Absolutely.
I'll buy it from you when you're done.
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to do that. Let my people get in touch with your people, and we will work on you some coffee paper.
So how does that work? You dip what do? You just put coffee stains. You just kind of just let some coffee drip on it. Do you soak it in coffee? Give me the recipe.
Okay.
I'm interested in this.
Okay. Here's the recipe. Go ahead and get yourself some paper. Copy paper is fine. Don't buy the expensive stuff, because you are going to be ruining it. That's the point. Go ahead and get a baking sheet with a raised lip on it. You probably got one, and this won't hurt. An old pan that you can wash off will be fine, as long as the paper will physically fit on it. Then we have to make the coffee that's going to wake the dead. You have to take this, and have you ever made up a slurry of salt water or sugar water? You know that there's a certain amount of solute that water is going to be able to hold. Well, it's the same thing with coffee. There's a certain amount it's going to be able to hold. You want to get close to that point, and I suggest that you use instant coffee for this. You make this stuff up. Now, my God.
Wait, you're saying I shouldn't craft some fine artisanal coffee for this?
Well, It's your money, you do you. But I find the always save black and yellow label. My God, you must be desperate if you drink this coffee. Is perfect for this job. And then you mix this stuff up and use little red Solo cups and whatnot. Lay one sheet of paper in and then drench it. Just pour this all over it and make sure it all gets covered. Flip the paper over. Make sure all that side gets covered, and then you are going to be horribly messy, so I suggest you use towels and gloves for this. Pull the paper out and scrape it along the side as you pull it out to get as much of the stuff off as you can. Lay this down on a paper towel or on a cloth towel that you don't care about. Then grab an iron that you should have been getting hot all this time, and then you dry it off with the iron. You let the heat of the iron turn it up to as hot as you can get it. Let that boil the coffee off. And you'll know when you're making progress. Flip it over, do it the other way. Be careful that you don't tear the paper. If you want to go back and add some more texture, dip your fingers in it, throw some splatters. Whatever you need to do on the paper, dry those out the same way. And when you're done, the paper will be warped and buckled, and it'll have these little things on it. If you want blood, use iodine drops. That's great for blood. And then go ahead. Most printers have a manual feed. Have your filter or have your document already ready. Put this in through the manual feed and let it print on the paper. And when you're done, you wind up with something that I think looks pretty good.
You wouldn't happen to have any images of this you could throw in the chat. I mean, I could look one up, but if you have one that you've made and took a photo of, that would be awesome.
I don't have one right now. I wish I did. Sorry. Don't have that right now. I can get one, and I will put it up. I'll go ahead and throw this to Pex, and y'all can chat amongst yourselves while I get that photo, but I will have it for you.
You mean you weren't prepared for something that I just threw out randomly to have in front of you? For shame. For shame.
My shame knows no bounds. Yes, I am. Miserable, unscrutable worm. We'll go find pretty picture.
I know you have to do it now. Don't run off to it now. Maybe if you have a chance next time you do one, pop it in, or if you have one sitting around after the chat, throw it in there. But I was just curious if you had one handy, like a glamour shot of this thing, because it definitely seems really cool. I definitely will try it at some point soon.
Okay, this is within arm's reach of me, so you just grab this. It's already made up. I'll be right back. You do your thing.
What's he grabbing?
He's grabbing, he just gave the recipe for his using coffee and an iron to create, a weathered paper look. And I think he had one nearby. I asked if he had a photo, and he was like, well, I got one nearby. So he's going to generate one. Do you have any homemade prop recipes? I confess I have none.
No, I buy all my stuff because, like I said, I'm not lazy. It's just I don't have time.
So what's your favorite one that you've got? I mean, not necessarily a whole box, but if there was one prop that you just love, or that just, beyond whatever it is in the moment or in context, just which one was just amazing, cool, crazy?
I have these, what do they call it? These Egyptian little staff things. So it's what they use to hold in their hands. They're kind of like wand size, but they're made of metal. But they're light because the metal they use.
The ones that kind of have the loop at the top.
Yeah, those. I have a set of those that I use for an Egyptian game, and as the DM, holding those at all times, using them as like pointer aids was just fun for me as a DM.
Well, those are really cool, and you can always throw those in anytime you want to just have kind of a neat factor. Yeah, they're definitely generic enough that you can take them out of whatever context and throw them in another one.
Right, and I'm big into Call of Cthulhu, obviously, so I have little H.P. Lovecraftian things here and there, tablets, odd inscription things that are like plaques or engraved kind of stuff. I love stuff like that. I fanboy over that myself, but that's me, and other people like other things as well. I know it's not ivory. It's the knockoff of ivory where you're not killing animals to have it, but there's a lot of those on the net as well if you want to have that kind of aesthetic going around.
Ah, nice. Whoa, that was interesting. Yeah, I have a little like a sleeping Cthulhu figurine. Somehow I got it at a job I was at. They had this, and it's funny because it's it's pretty heavy, and so I have it sort of in a closed bookcase. It's got a glass cover, and it's kind of sitting there just on top of some books. And my daughter likes to tease me that she's going to wake him up, because he's asleep. But I said, don't wake him up. That'll be bad.
The Sleeping Cthulhu, and it's all good. Well, we all know how the world ends, folks. A little girl wakes up a doll.
That's it. Did you find you found your example paper?
I did find the example, and I am waiting on my phone to reboot, and I will get that to you because it decided just to take a nap for no reason. And
okay, you mean your phone is not Linux too, and never needs to be rebooted?
Yeah, it's the bad kind though. It's the kind that Google got hold of. Here, let me let me get this picture taken.
I think I don't know if we have anything else to do on props and pecs. Did you have any topics you wanted to talk about? Did you want to talk? Is there any kind of swords and wizardry stuff you want to talk about? What do you got? Did you have anything prepared?
Yeah, I mean, I got one more thing on the props. Another thing I like to use, if you're not familiar, they're called puzzle boxes, and they make some really neat looking ones, especially the wooden ones. So what I like to do is when I have a puzzle in a dungeon, I can pop one of these out. I can take out whatever crappy prize they put in and put in my own little prize or my own little note or whatever in the puzzle box. So it gives them a tangible thing to figure out. It's more of a play aid, and I just like doing. I like doing stuff like that. Doesn't mean you have to or need to.
Have you ever had that argument from people that my players got 18 intelligence, so I should not have to physically or mentally open up the puzzle box?
And I say, great, prove it. Yes, I have gotten that, but
I think the whole point is that they, as the player, cannot prove it because they only have a 9 intelligence or whatever, and their character has. I mean, it's one of those interesting questions. I always think of it as like, look, your. This is why I guess on a little bit of a tangent, I don't like the name intelligence for that attribute because it's really more about maybe memory or learning or something of that nature. Because it's when you role play a character, you are taking over their brain. It's like their brain's been swapped out and your brain as a person's been put in there. So it doesn't matter if you take over Albert Einstein's brain. In that moment when you're role playing Albert Einstein, it's like you're in, what was that show? It's not Sliders. What was that show back in the day where the guy would take over different people and have to figure out kind of what to fix?
Quantum Leap.
Thank you. Quantum Leap. He quantum leaps into a body. He can't just say like, oh, well, I'm in Einstein's body, so I have Einstein's brain. It's like, no, you're going to have to figure it out. What would Einstein do with what you know and what you have? That's always the kind of thing I use. But it's definitely interesting with the puzzles in general, definitely with physical puzzles. Did you when people were bringing that up to you, was that in con games that you ran, or was that in your home games? What was the context?
I was honestly looking for props just to have around the house, around the table. And somebody mentioned on a forum that, hey, puzzle boxes make great prizes. And then I kind of leapfrogged that, like, you know what? Instead of just an aesthetic around the room, I'm going to make my players use this because this sounds fun. And then I tried it out, and they loved it because they loved trying to figure it out because it was more of an interactive. I think players, well, I'm not going to say players. I'm going to say my table likes interactivity a lot with tangible things. So maybe we're weirdos like that, but that's how we do.
Now, when you say puzzle boxes, what kind of puzzle boxes are you talking about? I mean, when I hear the word, I think of something made in the 1800s out of wood and the tears of children and whatever else they could find, and string all this together with brass. And it's a really intricate thing to try to figure out how to shape this into something else, or that little box from Hellraiser or something like that. What are you define that for me a little bit better? Maybe I missed it.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. In here, I'll put an image, also with prices.
Hey.
So yeah, they're made of wood, usually cheap old wood or balsamic wood or whatever. You can go as high or low budget as you want on these. But usually what I do is they have some crappy little prize or card that says, hey, you won in there. And I swap that out with whatever A can fit in there and B, what I think fits for whatever they're trying to solve. either like a little crappy gem. Hey, you got a gemstone out of it. Hooray. That you can get at like at the dollar store. I'll put like a journal note in there or something, or one of my handouts like I linked in there earlier with the Cthulhu stuff. Some require keys, some require turning knobs, this, that, and the other. And they can go from easy complexity to, hey, you really do need an 18 intelligence in real life to figure this out.
My cousin's a super fan of those puzzle boxes, and his brother gets them for him, for presents all the time, and he just rips right through them. He's like a expert at those things at this point.
Right, but when I look at these, I'm like, that's exactly what I would see in a dungeon, outside of it needing to be aged, but good luck finding those. Like you said, you need the antique versions, and I don't have the budget, so I buy these.
Yeah, you said rips right through those, and suddenly I had this picture in my mind of the barbarian solves the puzzle box.
Yeah, I would feel bad if someone had just spent $50 on the puzzle box, and the player goes, "Hey, I'm going to do this barbarian style," and just takes a hammer and just smacks it to pieces.
Me found thing inside.
I slide the puzzle box toward me. I solve it and give him the thing before I smash it.
I have a lot of bad ideas like that.
See gift number 2. What's gift number 2? I got to scroll up, I bet. Oh, yes, for sure. Yeah, the thing is, I used to be big on the puzzles. I think the puzzle box actually is a pretty good use of the, I guess, logic puzzle, because one of the things that happened to me one time was someone failed to give us the piece of vital information we needed to actually figure out the logic puzzle. So literally it was unsolvable, and of course it was either after a long time or we finally just whatever, got past it or skipped it, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, I forgot this one bit," and we're like, "Yeah, that's the one bit we needed to know to actually do it," and that kind of soured me on the puzzle. So I'm like, yeah, that's the kind of thing that I would forget, to give some vital piece. But when you actually have a physical box there, at least it's solvable, right? You know that everything is there to do it, and you're not worried about misspeaking something or forgetting something or doing something that's going to throw the whole thing off.
I got my favorite one here. It was just when we were starting these, and they were trying to like spin the box or the corners of the box and open it this way and that and the other. And the solution was very, very simple. You turn the box over and the key's taped under the box. It took them an hour to figure this out, and I had a good old laugh when they did.
Yeah, clue that, man.
That reminds me of an old MacGyver episode that it was these kids in like an MIT kind of school, and they had to create these locks. And I think it was the first kid, either the kid whose locks survived the longest, in other words, you had to kind of get in the room, and you had to figure. And so it was all about these kids were creating these sort of puzzles around their locks in the rooms, and you had to. I think it was whoever's kid like made it through, I don't know, a day or whatever without their door being unlocked. But the one kid, he was the friend of MacGyver or whatever. His thing was really ingenious, because what you had to do is you had to have a keyhole, so you could, or not a keyhole, or a hole you could look into to see in the room, and that was supposed to give you ideas about the puzzle, how to figure it out. What he did was he had a miniature version of the room, and in that keyhole, and so you'd look into this miniature version, and when the door was actually unlocked from the beginning, but you look through the keyhole, it would make it look like it had a really complicated lock there. So this whole thing of fooling you into thinking you had to do something was in reality all you had to do was open the door.
Beautiful.
Oh yeah.
Oh, what's that gif? Clue bat. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, just not to go on a tangent, but there's so much anime out there that people just reference that stuff, and I am just not. I feel like people will go around and like give all these kind of references and stuff, and this is a reference to that, and I'm like, I have no idea what any of these animes. I'm so behind the curve on anime.
Well, for me, this is an anime. This is just random. This is just random stuff that you get for keeping up with memes on the internet. Imgur is a site that I go to all the time whenever I'm bored, and people just post tons and tons and tons of stuff. I think, to my shame, that I can probably carry on an entire conversation with memes if I have to.
Speaking of memes, did you guys hear about the mountain meme that's was just starting, I think, or just came up recently. Apparently a guy posted on Twitter, and I don't know what happened, but the guy's account, because I went to look up his original Twitter post, and it was just his account was suspended by Twitter. So I don't know. I don't know what happened between when this kind of got memed and maybe he got into trouble for something or other. But essentially, he was running a game, and he had decided to send his players and sort of, I guess, a flashback or a little time skip back in time to see the founding of the city. That was so they they see the city in present time, then they go back in time to see kind of what was happening, the founding of the city. But by accident, in the flashback part, he described a mountain, I guess, behind the city or near the city, in the background. But in present time, there was no mountain. So they switch back to present, and one of the players goes, "Oh, I'm really interested to find out what happened to that mountain." And suddenly he's like, "Oh gosh,
yes.
What did I do? What do I do with it? How do I figure out what happened?" And that apparently had a Twitter poll about his possible solutions to the mountain problem. Did somebody wish it away? Did it just get up and walk away? Like always things that happen to the mountain. And it spawned, at least on what I was seeing on the D&D things on Reddit, all these memes about the mountain. So it was kind of, I don't think I'd have been, that's about as close as I've been to sort of the genesis of a meme. Actually, so it's kind of funny to see it. But I wanted to see the original thing, and he got suspended by Twitter for something or other. So
nice. I do remember, now that you describe it, I remember tangentially touching that, and I never got back to it. But it does ring a very distant bell. That's not an Alan EXE has crashed and must close. Do you like it when you just can't talk? Whenever you just can't English anymore? Because I'm having that moment right now. Please forgive me.
It's morning, and coffee is required. It's the healing potion of choice today. Hey,
wow. My computer's on. Awesome. Nobody told me.
That always helps. Do you not Discord on your computer?
Yeah, I do. I do it exclusively on my computer. It's just I have my tang all tangled up around my eye teeth, and I can't see what I'm saying.
Oh, I got you.
Well, I got a segue if we want to do a different topic.
Absolutely, segue away.
So I've been doing some research on the old O&D and D material, the third-party stuff, and I think you guys know Jason Savoda. He's done a few of these chats before. You may not. Anyway, I found one of his old articles, and there were a few things on there that I had no idea existed. For example, the
Dragon's Foot.
Dragon's Foot? No.
Yeah, that's a name I haven't seen in a while. I just caught it on the link.
Oh yeah, he may reference that. It's the old Warlock supplements and the, I'm gonna get this name wrong, Arduin Grimoire trilogy and all the world's monsters and stuff. So I was segueing into that. I guess using third party or non-core company material as core material in your games. How do you guys feel about that? Or puzzle piecing your system stuff together with other resources outside of, I guess, I don't know, we'll go more modern here, outside of the core books from like WotC or something.
I'm absolutely for it. All the stuff that's out there, other people have done a lot of heavy lifting for you. They've got ideas that you can't have because you've only got one brain, and you might as well use it if you find something that's great. Now, if you want to start publishing it and start making money off of it, I think we've ran into a problem. But if you just want to use it to make your game at home better, go crazy.
I mean, the way I look at it is when I'm looking at third-party materials, I just want to know that the stuff has been developed and thought out in a way that makes sense. It's kind of like the difference between, okay, something that, the Frog Gods put out. Yeah, I know that stuff's been gone through the ringer and tested out versus, oh, I'm just going to go print something out from D&D Wiki. It's like, not so much on the latter one. But, as far as just the use of third-party materials in general, yeah, I think it's great because I'm all about that anyway. We talked before about what I look for in products. That's the kind of stuff I look for anyways. What can I grab and use? And it doesn't have to be, I'm not someone who feels like it has to be first party to be good or be, belong to the game. It's whatever you can use and fit in, and, you can do it. And some of the best stuff of all time has come out of third party material. So yeah, do it.
Now, I will go ahead and play devil's advocate here just for a second, since nobody else is doing it. Whenever I first started back in 1991, I was with a group that believed vehemently that if TSR didn't do it, it wasn't good enough to go in. You didn't do that. You had to stick to official storylines. You had to stick to official this and that and the other thing. And it was kind of oppressive. And I didn't like it then, and I don't like it now. But there are people who do indeed want to do it that way. If there was one, there's two. And, right? There are people who want to have that official timeline, that official storyline that follows through, and they don't want it, finger quotes, polluted by third-party material or anything that breaks the official narrative. And to those people, hey, more power to you, I guess, but I don't want to play like that.
Yeah, I mean, that having gone through the third edition, just glut of third-party stuff, I could definitely see in those situations. And I think Pathfinder maybe has a similar thing, just with not even outside of what Paizo puts out, but just as far as the kind of creep of the power creep involved in things that you sometimes want or need really to just tone back from third party material or even first party materials. There just can be so much of the quality is not all the same. It's not checked the same. And there is sometimes a good reason. I would never say not to for story reasons, but just as far as consistency, what you can trust, again, if your choice is, if you're saying to me, let's say, hey, we can either play with WotC material or we can play with WotC material plus D&D Wiki, I'm saying, yeah, we're just playing with WotC material because I don't trust D&D Wiki. And some of these eras where you just had, and maybe even now is one of them to a certain extent, where you just have an explosion of material from all kinds of people and not all of it is well thought out or well checked or well balanced, and whatever you want to think about, then it pays to have a critical eye on what material you're going to put in before you just drop it into your game. It's a lot easier to not put something in your game than to put it in, find out it's broken, and then have to figure out how to get it out and not upset anybody or mess with anyone.
Yeah, I've totally ran into that before when TSR was doing their publishing on things. You did get a consistent quality, and we're not going to talk about psionics. Second edition psionics never happened. We'll move right on along. But for the most part, you had a consistent quality and everything was balanced together as a whole. And you start getting third-party materials and all of a sudden, what is this? And there are people who are still purists like that today. They're purists to the point that they won't even look at another system. I've been at a convention and had a guy come up to me and the sum of our conversation was that if it's not Pathfinder, it doesn't exist. And he turned around and walked away.
Second edition doesn't exist. We went from first to third, obviously. Yeah.
Hey, fair is fair.
Kidding aside, I like to hack things and tinker with things. And hey, I broke the game. Let's see if I can unbreak it now. That's fun for me. Some of the hacking I don't introduce into my games. I just like to tinker with things and see what happens and poke and prod with it to see. Because I think we all, in our heart of hearts, we want to make a better game. There's got to be a better mousetrap, right? And I just like playing with those kind of scenarios and stuff. So, because there's so many materials from either blogs or third-party books or DM advice from your counter monkey talking with your fellow GMs. And you want to try things out to see if they work or if it's fun or, let me put it to paper and see if it makes sense. And then, nope, this is garbage. Hot garbage. It's going away.
Well, I mean, I never have bad ideas, but I can understand why people who do have bad ideas would want to take them back. I also don't have personality flaws.
Oh.
And this is where my wife chimes in and says, honey, I think we discovered one of your personality.
Yeah, I would find it hard to just have someone who just would dismiss anything because it doesn't have a certain, publisher's mark on it. But yeah, I guess everyone's got their super fans.
Yeah, well, if you have a good brand and that's your seal of approval, your symbol of quality, and you're known for doing good quality control, then I would say that's a badge of honor, really, to be able to do that. You can trust that as long as you've made your brand trustworthy. If you are just random grab stuff off the internet and throw it together, my God, the mess that was 3.5 and that open game license. It offered a lot of material, but it ran the gamut for quality control too.
Yeah, I mean, which isn't very different from now. They've done a better job. I don't know if it's a better job, or we're just in a better place as far as just with the way the internet is now and how you can get more opinions and reviews on things to sort of let the cream rise to the top. But there's tons of material out there, and there's a lot out there that's really good, and there's a lot out there that's really not good. And fifth edition, definitely the way it's balanced and everything, it is a more technical thing if you're trying to get it right than say doing something for an OSR game where you can really kind of spitball and sort of be rough around the edges and it not have such a dramatic effect on things as it can have in fifth edition.
Well, I think we've gotten better because we have more of a open source with reviewers and stuff. I don't recall anybody reviewing a TSR product in the early days other than buying it and trying it out at your local hobby shop and seeing how it goes. I think because internet being internet, just the source of information fires off faster because of all the opinion reviewers we have and unboxings and quality control. Also, we've learned from the past, like companies kind of figured out, well, players love this, players don't love this because we tried it before and it didn't work.
Yeah, for sure. Dave has put in, and Dana have said a little bit about fourth edition. The thing is about fourth edition for me is that it, in some ways it was in the wrong niche and it was ahead of its time because Gloomhaven, which was the number one game in the world, or at least it's according to Board Game Geek for, I don't know, a year or something, to me is just in some ways a little bit more streamlined, but probably overall less good for what it does. Fourth version of fourth edition. I remember when I played it, I was like, this is kind of like fourth edition with a couple of things thrown in to remove the DM and make it more play it on, just not straight up on a board game kind of game. But that really is like, wow, this is really fourth edition. Fourth edition had come out now and been able to spin that off in a different way as opposed to coming out when it did with the way it was put out, then it probably would have been thought of a lot better. And by the way, fifth edition Trojan horses a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, but a fair number of fourth edition type mechanics into the game. But they just kind of repackaged them in a way that I think didn't raise a lot of people's hackles the way the fourth edition version's gone, because things like your encounter powers and daily powers, those are your short rest, long rest powers. It's really the same thing. But they just changed the lingo to make it a little bit less off-putting, I think. And the way they balance it, it's not quite as balanced as intensely as fourth edition was in terms of things like magic abilities versus other powers. But there's a lot of the way it's balanced is the way fourth edition was balancing things.
And the mechanics side of 4E, it's not bad. It's a good game for a mechanical standpoint. It works. There's not a lot of problems with it. And Todd is right on the money. It got marketed poorly in the way they were advertising it. And if they had a do-over, aka 5E, I think they would have done things a lot better, and they did. Again, we learned from our mistakes, apparently.
Well, I congratulate you for acknowledging fourth edition was a mistake. But I had a thing that just, all kidding aside, just had something that occurred to me. We refer to these games as Dungeons and Dragons. We just call it D&D and we go on from there. But really, first through fifth edition, those were not the same game. Well, first and second were really close, but they're not. They're not the same game. They're different games. And different is not better. And we're not doing things with the Dungeons and Dragons logo on the front of our materials. But again, they're all different games with pretty similar mechanics for the most part. I mean, if you know how to role play one, it's just a matter of minor bookkeeping to keep up with your character sheet, right? We're still doing role playing. We're doing tabletop RPGs. And it just struck me as an interesting reflection that these things that TSR / Wizards of the Coast are putting out, they're doing 5 or 6 different games here, or they have done, and they'll probably do a 6th or a 7th, depending on how you count.
guarantee, and I'll tell you why, is because those first 3 books sell the most. And whenever you do another set of those 3 books, either a reprinting or a new edition, they make a lot of money. And why break away from that formula, I say?
Well, I mean, if everybody's got a copy of your book, nobody's going to buy another copy of your book. You've got to keep publishing. They're not a game company. They're a publishing company. And they have to publish to make their money, because if God calls judgment, their rent is still due. And they have got, that mortgage. They've got to get that paid, right?
Right. I mean, I think they're on their 10th, 11th printing, maybe more now, of the core, the core books.
Yeah, the one thing with when you start moving towards a subscription model is you're not necessarily reliant anymore on doing the same kind of release schedule. I know that I don't know how much they get, what their cut is of D&D Beyond, because I know they don't run that directly. So I don't know, but I assume that's what they're going to keep pushing too, is trying to get you on that subscription model and sort of paying to kind of rent the online versions of things. And that kind of allows you to sort of break away somewhat from the traditional print cycle.
Oh yeah, it's genius. They have a bunch of unpaid developers working around the clock for them, and some of them are even paying for the privilege of doing that development. And they call that Adventurers League, whatever it is. I'm sorry, I can't remember exactly, but you know the one I'm talking about. These are people that are making stuff for them without them having to lift a finger, taking a 50% cut to put it up on their website for sale. And they don't have to do dirt. That is amazing. And I wish that I was the smart kind of guy that would have thought of doing that first. And Datum's right. There are no more finished products. You're absolutely right, Datum.
I'm going to go refill my cup of coffee, but Alan, did you want to start that topic with Todd that we did on the other show?
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and I'll throw it out as Todd's strapped in and ready.
Oh, is this the what makes a game a game?
Sure. Since you brought it up, I'll be glad to.
So I haven't listened to that yet. So what was your guys' take on, or what was your thought?
Okay, my thought is that there are a lot of things that we do to waste our time. There are a lot of things we do to spend time. We burn time. We kill time. We look for ways to make the present hurry up and get along its business doing its thing. And some of the ways we do that are playing games. And some of the ways we do that are just kind of sitting there vegetating, staring at the wall. Some people do drugs. Some people whittle. Some people do drugs while they whittle as they're staring at the wall. There are all kinds of things that we do to get to the future 1 second per second. So of all the things we do, what is it that makes a game a game? What is the difference between whittling, let's say, or doing a big bowl of drugs and playing a game? Are some things a game and some things not? How do you know what the breaking point is when something goes from mindless time wasting to actually playing a game? Like skipping rocks on a pond. How do you make a game out of that? We've talked about that too, right? Or we've said that to ourselves. Let's make a game of it. I know you've heard it at least once.
So my first thought, just off the top of my head, is that there's some kind of score attached. And that's why you can, and that's how, and I guess why you can gamify so many things, because you could make whittling a game if you had some kind of, right, you add the competition aspect, add some score, some kind of judgment, whether it's how fast you can whittle or who can whittle the best or who makes a more, whatever. We're going to give you both some sort of template, and can you whittle to match that template in an hour or whatever. Some way of adding a scoring mechanism, I think, is for me what kind of makes it a game. And I think as far as role-playing games, that score can be finishing story quests. If your goal is to throw the ring into Mount Doom, then you win when you achieve that score, that end state of throwing the ring into Mount Doom. If it's a sandbox game, then maybe those characters win. You win when you reach level 10 at name level, or whatever goals you've set out for yourself, or just raising levels, as far as levels being a scoreboard all their own. So that's my first, and I'm sure there are tons of holes in it, but that's my first thought.
Well, that's not a bad first thrust. Well, what about solitaire? What about that? Do you win solitaire? Is that a game? Does it qualify as a game? And if so, why?
I believe that there is a scoreboard. You either complete the solitaire or you don't. And when you complete it, and this is, I don't know if people did this when they were playing it in person, but certainly it's true if you play a solitaire app, it starts giving you your percentage winning. So you have that kind of meta score. Not only is the score as far as did you actually win the solitaire or how close you got, but then over time, how good are you at getting those completed sets. So I would say yes, that the solitaire, it does have a scoring element. So I would say yes, it's a game.
Well, solitaire is an algorithm more than it's something that you have a strategy for. You go ahead and you run it. You can teach a computer to do this, and they have. And it's not really what I would call competitive. I've never seen competitive solitaire, and that would be hilarious or incredibly boring. And the more boring it was, the more hilarious it would be, I believe. But there must be something else to gamifying something.
I think just because there's an algorithm to do it, or you can teach computers to do it, or machines to do it, to me, it does not define whether it's a game or not. Because generally, when you're playing solitaire, at least when I've played it, you're not aware of the algorithm. It's almost more of a how mistake. Obviously there's a part of you shuffling the cards, and some shuffles just aren't winnable. The right cards aren't going to come out, and you're just going to lose. There's that part of it. And the other part is, how mistake free can you play? Because you can have the algorithm, but if someone calls you look away, you lose your little bit of, not that solitaire takes a lot of concentration, but there is a certain point. Do you hit all the right moves? Because you miss one. And if you miss one, depending on the type of solitaire you're playing, and there's more than one type of solitaire, there's like 1,000 types of solitaire. It's not just like it's not just the one Klondike or whatever is the kind of classic one. There's like a ton of them, and some of them are more harder, and some of them are harder. I think some of them are more quote unquote skilled. There probably is algorithms that solve all of them, but I don't think that's important. Like, I think tic-tac-toe is a game, even if it's a super simple game that it's one of the first programming things when you're just learning how to program something to play tic-tac-toe. But to me, it's still a game. How solvable it is, or how, I don't know, that part of it, to me at least, doesn't enter into the equation.
And you have chess programs as well to play against a computer algorithm, and chess is very much in fact a game. Same with poker.
Yeah, so what is it about all these things? I've got my philosopher's hat on, by the way. What is it about all these things that's common that we've talked about? We've talked about how, there's ways you can play, there's luck of the draw, there's a computer that's running down move lists in chess to see exactly what its best options are and picking from those. And if you're playing against another person, then you have that thing. I think what we're looking for is that element of randomness. There has to be an element of randomness in what you do. And if you don't have that, if it's going to be bog standard the same every single time, like two computers that are trained properly, or even a really well-educated chicken at a fair pecking out the right moves in tic-tac-toe, that's not a game anymore because it's not random. There is, if you do this, this is the response. So tic-tac-toe is really not there. But if you have somebody that doesn't know what's going on and they're just randomly throwing things out, I think that might be the point where we fall over into making something a game. Now, what about if can one person be playing a game and the other one not? Let's think of Saw. How about that? What does he say? Let's play a game.
He's playing a game. No one else is playing with him. There's a circumstance.
Well, they're the game pieces.
Sure. Okay.
And the random element is still there. So how is any of this relevant to what we're doing? As game master, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't think it is random. He's pre-picked out his victims, or pieces, as you put it. And he made those selections based off his computer algorithm and his own brain, that whatever software wrong wiring is going on there. And I guess he wins most of the games himself as the computer or sociopath, because they've made sequels, right?
Indeed. Responding to Silverhand there, I guess. Literally pieces, he says. So how can we incorporate this idea of what is a game into what we do on weekends whenever we run our game sessions? We admit that what we're doing when we're sitting down at the table is a game. There are algorithms, and my God, there are a bunch of metrics that we have to keep up with for types of scoring.
But there's not perfect recall of the algorithms. And this maybe plays into the randomness or not, but right, just as there are people out there who will follow a given algorithm for playing, a lot of people won't, even if such an algorithm exists, which is one of those bones of contention, right? The people who are the optimizers who feel like you should follow the best path, and you're potentially not playing it right, versus the folks who say, I deliberately refuse to follow the algorithms to make the best because I want to make something for a given effect. Right.
Well, there are people who well, let me start this thought over. I was recently talking to someone, and he said that he made the old fogey argument. These newfangled kids with their newfangled way that we used to play back in my day, and everybody doesn't like it, and they're just, the world's going to pot. Nobody knows how to play a good game of D&D anymore. And, okay, Boomer, I'll let you have your moment, right? So he tells me about this, and what he's saying is that his players would come up, and they were expecting it to be like a game of The Witcher, where they allow the experience to happen to them. Nice, Bex, nice. They let the game happen to them. They're not very interactive. They don't want to get too involved. When combat starts, yeah, sure, they'll pick up dice and they'll roll them, but nobody's checking anything out. Nobody's doing anything new. Nobody's saying, I want. And to older players like myself, this is, you feel like if that's happening at your table, that you're doing something wrong. You're just not engaging with these people. And
go ahead.
And if that's happening, well, how do we go ahead and bring this into a game? Because they're not playing a game; they're watching an interactive movie, and a barely interactive one at that. So, yeah, go ahead.
I think we're getting into the case of what you could do in the game. There are certain rules you can do, and we edit those rules as we go. Now, versus a video game where things are set in stone, however, you can modify the game, we call them mods, to change the circumstances that we either do at the table on the fly or make adjustments then and there. But I think they are both games, and I don't think there's a real difference in that. I think the gameness part of it is the enjoyment factor. Again, the counter argument to that is painting's perfectly enjoyable. Is that a game? No, unless you include like speed painting, I guess.
Or competitive painting, why not?
Of some sort, sure. And I think that's we're running both algorithms, an RPG tabletop versus an RPG video game. That they're very similar. At their core base. However, we can give that argument of video game RPGs aren't real RPGs, but I think that's necessary. The point of the topic of are they games? I think they are. One's just a bit more easier to do and anybody can do versus having some program skill and back knowledge on the computer side is the only real difference I'm seeing here.
Well, it is a game. It is a game. You are playing with other people, only these people have set up the rules beforehand, and you are literally driving the story. Your random actions are the things that introduce the random element in. You're not going to advance unless you do the right thing, but it's a game just as much as a puzzle box.
Yeah.
Well, if we're the source of the random, potentially, then the game itself doesn't have to be random at all.
As long as you have it. I don't think it matters where the randomness comes from, as long as you actually have that. If you have something that is going to play out the same way every single time you run the experiment, then that ceases to be a game.
Well, that's what I was saying. You can modify the experiment in the video game sphere.
Well, even those mods, that just gives you a coefficient on your calculations. And every time you run it, with that mod, you're going to get exactly the same results. And you better, because if you don't, then your game is going to explode into a garbled mess on the screen, and it's going to be what we call unplayable, right?
I'll concede to that point, sure. But even running a pre-written module, outcome, defeat big bad, don't defeat big bad. It's the how, or how you did it. That's the randomness you're talking about, I believe, which the tabletop pen and paper, I think, has a lot more breadth to do that. You could take longer in the video game sphere, or this, that, and the other. Maybe you're slinging spells. It takes you an hour to do it this way versus 30 minutes to do it this way, or different combinations, this, that, and the other. But the outcome's the same. You defeat big bad in video game, or you don't.
Yeah, and well, with video games, you can have speed runs and tool-assisted speed runs. This means that, and that's just button presses. That's the cool thing, which means they have to have this exactly right every single time, and they keep getting that consistent result. So it is, the player is the dice at this point. And that's, well, you've got a game. You've got a game. If the rules are complex enough and your circular reasoning that you're doing, if your circle is big enough, can you get away with circular reasoning? That makes sense to me. It's morning. Hey, how y'all doing?
If the circle's big enough, yeah, I suppose you could. There's stuff like Amber Diceless that gets rid of the dice anyway, and I'm sure there are other diceless systems too. That because as we're sort of saying in a way that being that we're humans and we're playing this and we're not computerized algorithms, we are always going to be that source of randomness to some degree or another, unless we're trying super hard not to. Like if we're doing a speed run and we want to be absolutely optimal, and there's one optimal way to do it, so we need to follow like race car drivers around an oval where we're trying to get that racing line every single time around it. Given that we're generally not playing through the same modules over and over again, and there's so many variables that we can't nail down, different GMs, different other players, all kinds of dice that we don't have to worry so much about that. But it's definitely interesting to think about. So having thought about this, how did that bring anything to you in focus as far as your own system and your own gaming? These thoughts about, I don't know, what is central to it being a game, or what do you want to emphasize as part of its gaminess as opposed to something else?
Well, I think that what it helped do for me is to clarify the importance of player choice. If you're going to be telling somebody a story, if it's going to be passive entertainment, I would think that it's possible to have something be more or less of, well, not more or less of a game, but more or less fun to get into. And as long as you give players that agency and that choice, and you're not force-feeding them material, then you're probably going to have a better game. If you do have players that like to sit there and just sort of allow the world to happen to them until you ask them to make a choice, and then they're not really sure what that choice is, maybe your style of game isn't for them. And speaking of games, I'm going to go ahead and do a plug for myself right here if I can, because as some of you may know, I have a new adventure coming out, and there it is. And okay, now I'll get back on topic. Please don't throw me off the show.
No worries. Ooh. It's called Cookie?
It's called Cookie, a horror story. And this particular module is one of those things that's supposed to be bright and shiny and pretty on the outside, and then you get into it and you realize that things have gone horribly, horribly wrong. I think everybody's going to love this when it comes out. It's been in a few playtests, and I believe that I am just short paragraphs and a couple of pieces of artwork from having this thing ready to go live. Thanks, mate.
I mean, player choice is one of those really interesting things. We all want it, right? But we also see how it can run amok in some ways, and then it becomes that kind of up to the GM to decide how much leeway to throw to people. It's that thing of like, okay, we were starting on the port city and the adventure is going to go over here, but the players decided to get on a boat and go to the other continent. Why? And of course you could say, well, like I tend to say is, if you don't have anything there, then just there are no boats in dock going to the other continent. It's not there. Right. But then other people would say, hey, don't do that. That's the player's choice. You should just now improv that entire continent for the players because they chose to go on this, 3-month thing. So, where do you draw that line? I think at some points it sort of makes sense to like, yeah, I can improv that continent. Sure. But I also see it as some people are going to get really flustered by that and not want to do that. But they are in that weird gray zone where they don't feel like they don't feel confident enough to just say, hey, those ships are leaving. There's not going to be a ship leaving for 6 months. So come check back in 6 months if you still want to go to the other continent. And that's not, look, that's not an unrealistic thing. The boats to, say from, in the Middle Ages or, a Renaissance from say, London to the New World weren't leaving every 5 minutes. You had to wait months and months and plan. So you just throw that at there. But, sometimes in that area where they don't want to say no to the players and take away this agency that's important. But at the same time, that agency isn't really leading anywhere because now it's just, you're leading into, off the map. So what do you do? Is that somewhere where you should say, hey, we gotta, and for players too, like, look, the other's content sounds great, but I know that he's not prepped, and we could come back to that later. I don't need to pull on that thread just because it's there. Like, I don't need to go Skyrim and get on my horse and try to ride to see how far the map goes just to check it out, just to see where I hit the invisible walls. Like, because I know that there's a dungeon right in front of me. Maybe I should go check that out instead.
Yeah. Now, whenever you have players that are intentionally trying to break your game like that, they're trying to break your game. They're trying to give you a headache. They're not trying to have fun and do a collective storytelling thing. They're trying to have fun at your expense. And we have a name for those kind of people around here. Everybody's got one, but you shouldn't show it off in public, right? And I try to not let those people play again. Because if your idea of fun is making sure you're the only one who's fun, then I'm sorry. Whenever you come back next time, could you not, come back? That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. And hey, I've put, or at least I think someone already had set that everyone should be able to, I'll set it to open mic, but you may need to exit and come back in if I've set that correctly.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Let's have fun.
Yeah, open up those floodgates. Yeah, the agency thing is interesting just in general. I feel like it's a really big topic and people really get into it many different. I've heard people say like, well, I'm not going to knock out have a character go unconscious in battle because I'm taking away their agency. And I kind of think like, what? Well, I mean, yes, you are taking away their agency, but it's due to choices, hopefully, that they at least committed themselves, the result of their own consequences. In that case, they have in some ways leveraged their agency, and now that is a possible price in degree. Yeah, I wouldn't just knock out a player just because for an entire session, but sometimes I think it can get a little bit, people kind of just like to pull up that like it's some kind of golden card that you should never can never be revoked. But there obviously are times where I think it is acceptable and that we have agreed that there are certain things that can happen, like being knocked unconscious, where you say that, hey, there are ways in the game that my character could temporarily or permanently, in the case of say a character dying, lose their agency, and that's okay. It's not an egregious sin towards gaming.
Well, with agency comes responsibility, comes consequences.
Oh, Dave's in.
Yeah.
Hey,
I'm in.
Say the words. No.
The thing that kind of gets irritating to me is it seems like there's this constant march towards like no out of control situations for players, as in, that they can make any choice at any time and do anything and be anything and be different things at different times and you can just take that to the extreme. And I think the issue with a lot of that is some of the most interesting things that can happen to you are when you're pretty much out of control of what can happen. And this is something that I actually give credit to White Wolf Systems for, because they have things like for Vampire, for example, they have like what happens if your hunger takes over, and you're pretty much out of control of what you do. I mean, you have some control, but not very much. I mean, you get to make a roll to see if you stay in control. And if you don't stay in control, well, then the storyteller gets to tell you what you did. You have to deal with consequences that are outside of your control. And it's the same thing as dealing with consequences that are in the game and are not going to change just because the players want to do something specific.
Yeah, I think there's something, and I don't know if this was happening all the time. I don't remember back in the day, but certainly with the modern players and I think that's the same thing that comes up with alignment, is they don't want their choices constrained by anything. So they don't want anyone saying, well, your alignment, so you shouldn't do that, or it's against your alignment. I tend to think of alignment as more descriptive than prescriptive. In other words, your alignment changes to match what you do as opposed to it saying what you can or cannot do. But
right.
It is somewhat similar in that, I mean, they've taken away most of the classes that have any alignment restrictions anyway, but say a cleric, if their alignment were to shift away from their deity, maybe they would lose their powers. But players just don't, at least maybe D&D players, maybe White Wolf players, or people who like Vampire the Masquerade and those similar games are different, but they just don't like anything to tell them that they can't just do whatever they want to do in the moment. They don't like those limits. But yeah, I agree as far as I think the really do a lot and they add a lot to the experience, but it just doesn't seem to be in vogue, at least for most players these days.
Yeah, most of the players that I have, invariably, whenever they're new, they want to pick chaotic neutral because they want to have that broad range of things to do, and they do look at alignment as a straitjacket, whereas I encourage you to look at it as a tool. Now, if you have that priest that's supposed to follow that god of goodness and benevolence that just will not stop raping and pillaging, I'm afraid that your alignment has shifted to a point where that deity doesn't want anything else to do with you. That's not me doing this to you. You have chosen this. Not my fault. Not my monkeys. You did it, right?
Charm person, hand over your character sheet, please, and thank you.
Well said. I'm making a minor adjustment at the top right corner. Here we go. There's your character.
And what I'm getting really is, I feel like as the demographic of people that plays these games broadens, that there's more players that are playing the game as a form of escapism versus, hey, we're going to get together and we're going to go on an adventure. And I think that the difference in how the premise of the game is laid out, I think the premise, just like as somebody passing the hobby and starting to come in, is that this is a world of endless, infinite creativity, and that's the lens that they see the game through. Where I think most of us that came into the games when they started were coming from more of this is a way to simulate war, and then this is a way to simulate characters, and this is a way to tell these adventure stories that we, these places and things that we want to go a little bit more specifically.
Oh yeah, the game has evolved so much since those 3 little booklets back in the 70s. And I think that I think that the game has gotten better. I think it's gotten better.
Well, and it's like I think it's good that people play the game in different ways. I just think that if you are somebody that is creating a module or a campaign setting or something like that has a certain flow of, okay, well, you grew up here, so these are the kinds of things that you learned. These are the you're this alignment because this is not only just who you are, but what was the culture and the environment that you grew up in. It's all the nature, nurture, and as far as we can tell, we're about half and half. That those real world things seem to not be taken into so much consideration. That's one thing about Ember that I was reading, like Alan's given me some access to some things that aren't published yet. And a lot of it has to do with that cultural context, and that those cultural contexts are actually very apparent and come out in the game. And you have to kind of go with the flow with those cultural contexts, because if you don't, well, you're going to be you're going to be rotting in a jail somewhere. And Alan doesn't care if you live or die.
Not really. Whatever gives me the best story outcome, that's what should happen to you.
Right. So like these ideas where you've just got all these people and you got a party that's full of people from all different alignments, all different goals in life, and they're all going to come together and they're going to form this adventuring party and do this adventure together. I think is just I don't think it's a great premise.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the premises are always are flawed in general, right? But there's usually that meta thing of, hey, we know what we're here to do as players, that we can fill in the gaps of, why do five guys meet in a random tavern, decide to then tromp off and become lifelong friends, delving into dangerous places? Does it make sense? Not really, but we get it. Right.
But I think it also has to do with some of the I mean, I don't know about you guys, but it seems like people want to just compress, like session 0 into nothing and not have one. And I think that session -2, -1, and 0, and maybe more is actually what I'm going for. If I'm going to set up a long-term campaign, if I'm going to when I was playing with the guys that I played with in high school, I'm pretty sure there was at least a month of planning that went on before we actually played, because I wanted to talk to everybody on their own and get little ideas of what they were interested in, what they wanted to play. And then I wanted to get them together and bring those ideas, but make characters together. And then start to figure out if I'm from this race and I'm from over here and I'm from over there, what got us all together? Why are we together?
Yeah, the backstories are good if you have time for them. And
right.
If you're running things at conventions and whatnot, I hate to run off with this really quick, but I won't be long. If you're at a convention, every time you have a limited amount of time to get something done. You've got to get in. You have to say all you guys are together. You know each other. And here you are at the start of the dungeon or in the bar where things are about to go down or what have you. Let's get you right into the action, because you people are physically not going to meet each other again once this convention's over. And we know it. So let's all get together and have fun.
Right. And I'm completely aware of that. I mean, all my professional work has been in the organized play space. So, I mean, I understand the other side of the coin, which is we're just going to throw people together and here it is. But in that situation, everybody is still on the same page of, we have a mission and we have so much time to, basically go through this mission and have some interesting, we're going to make some interesting decisions. We're going to do some things differently. This module isn't going to be the same for every adventuring party as it goes. But there are beats that are going to be hit, and there are things that are probably going to be resolved. I mean, I'm not going to say it's 100% because I'm sure that there's TPKs and stuff, but there is a mission and there's a concrete goal, and you either make it or you don't.
Oh yeah, I agree. I think that session 0 is more of a modern concept. It's probably one of the, I don't remember ever having them back the day. You just kind of showed up with your character sheet and were just thrown in the mix. And there wasn't a lot of thought to either a dungeon master kind of laying out and sort of pitching their idea and kind of putting it out there for everybody. It was kind of, you just showed up to and maybe it is like this a lot of the time in real world situations outside internet talk where we're more aware of the stuff, but you just kind of came in and you either sort of took the GM's game as it came or you just found somewhere else to play. And that was kind of it.
Much. Yeah, it seems like that's a modern thing.
I think it is. And I think it stems for people in the social atmosphere market. We'll go with that. One of those tend to drive home the narrative. Whereas when I was playing and starting out, it was, you built the narrative as you played. You didn't have the narrative pre-built before you started, pretty much. You literally, what Todd said, you came in, either you played that night or you found a different table.
Right.
That's just how it was. And I think and I can't say if having a pre-written narrative in advance is great. I know at my tables, if you bring me a 17-page backstory, I'll say thank you, but I'm not going to read it. Because I'm here to play a game.
Yeah,
Well,
totally. I didn't come here to read, but yeah.
And the thing is that the stuff that I was talking about, I didn't pre-write anything. The only thing that I knew was enough. I had enough backstory to get each of these characters from different places together and under, having the same goals. And that's it. Just aware that they would have decent party cohesion, or at least an idea of decent party cohesion before we started playing.
Yeah, I loved Session Zero. I think it's something. I mean, I kind of wish we had it back in the day. I think it's good that it has transparency. I think particularly the way people really love, because I'm someone who always has trouble with backstories, and I just want to play the adventure, whatever it is. But people get really into them now, and it's super important, I think, particularly over campaigns, to make sure that all the player characters have these relationships that they can continue to to build on and have, because you end up with these issues that can happen in campaigns where a player has reached their own goals, or a character has, and then the player suddenly, because they're not so much interested in, I'm just going to hang around because I know we're all playing together, is wondering, well, how does my character keep hanging with these people? They have nothing in common. They're from different continents or different worlds or whatever. He just wants to go back, whatever. I mean, yeah, there's the meta part of me just says, look, you're here to play the game together, so just figure it out. There's no question that you can eliminate that friction, whatever friction there is, if you simply build into your premise, or as part of the Session Zero, this is why you guys hang out together. These are your character goals. This is the character reasons why you're all sticking together. I think it's only a positive. I don't think there's any negative to doing it, and it's definitely something that I always tell people, have that Session Zero. Really get all that stuff out there and figure it out up front.
Well, see, now there is a whole new topic that could probably eat up an hour or two on its own. What do you do when you have people who really want to do that 17-page backstory and weave this into the world and get everything started, and then you have these other people who are like, can we kill something now? Let's go do the adventure and kill something now. That's all I'm interested in doing. Or then you have people who do get their goals accomplished, and now what do you do? How do you go ahead and put all these people together into a cohesive adventure, the Nightmare Party? How do you get all this together and make it work? And I wish there was a boilerplate answer for that, and if there is, I haven't found it yet.
I mean, I think there is.
Okay, of course you do. Of course you do.
You got two options. Either you get rid of the problems, and this is the thing, like, it's different now. There's so much more choice on where you're going to play. You can go online. You could find 975 million games that you could try and, fit in with that group. And if you don't fit in, they're going to get rid of you. So either you can tailor the group, or you can. And this is kind of the thing with the Session Zero stuff. If you're playing with characters or players that they are on board with figuring out how each other knows each other and kind of giving a little and taking a little from each other on that part of their character, then you don't have to do that stuff. But I found that not everybody has those skills to be able to say, okay, I'm going to give a little and take a little, and this we're gonna go with what happens.
Well, then you're getting into the difference in skill levels of players. Are going to be better than others? Some, and well, I guess I could say some are going to be worse, but the first part really wrapped all that up. And it's your job to manage this. You have the players that are still in their shell and you're trying to get them out. You have players who are like, I'm hogging the mic, and you've got to stomp them down and let other people play. And it's a bit of a balancing act. And I don't know that there is a simple solution to any of that other than just kind of winging it and doing the best you can with what you've got. Fart jokes are allowed.
What is it? The management side of being the storyteller is, I think, the thing that gets kind of pushed to the side a little bit, especially in games where they're trying to get rid of the game master, and it's like, I mean, that's part of the thing, but I mean,
kill the GM. That's the game.
Yeah. Well, it could be. I mean, and I think if you're playing something like Descent, or like a more complex board game, that might be a good way to approach it. But what I like to say is, winning at RPGs is getting together with your group and having a good time. And I put especially as a good time because it doesn't mean you're always having fun. You could be dead in the corner. You could something really bad could happen in the game. And those moments aren't fun, but those moments are essential.
Just so you know, guys, he's talking bad about me right now. Keep going.
I am. Those moments are essential to having a fully rounded experience when it comes to RPGs. You have to have bad times. You have to have good times. You have to have success. You have to have failure. You have to, and you have to have some kind of meaning to go for once you're done with whatever big, what do you call it? It could be different things. It could be like a story point, or you finish a quest, or you kill the big bad, you save the princess, whatever it is. There has to be something else. And that, I think the hard thing with D&D is that something else probably has to be more powerful than the thing that you just did, or else, you're not going to be able to, you're going to have that, what do you call it? Kind of like deflation. But I think that the best games, really, they don't have to just ramp up to where you're punching God in the face, and then where do you go from there as fast as a lot of games can. What you can do is you find the cycle of, okay, we went out and we did this thing, we had some downtime, we did, we kind of chilled out, this is where like the NPC community and the connection to the world is actually, I feel, most important after you've gotten something really big accomplished. Because if the world still matters and what you do in the world is actually meaningful to your characters and the other NPCs, then you can have these downtimes where it's not action-packed, but it's still interesting and meaningful. And then you figure out a way to have another, go off on another adventure or mission or, whatever kind of RPG you're playing.
I mean, I think that brings in more of an interest factor on the character side. But from the player side, especially the kind of games I play, the motivator is gold, because gold is your XP factor. You can never have too much of it, because you either have plans to build out your kingdom because you need to spend your money to get XP, or you need to acquire gold to, get XP. And either monsters aren't a great resource of that. As far as story elements, I think that just provides more interesting factor to things, and it's great to see. I think everything incorporates having both a character motivator and a player motivator. I think is you need both to maintain full interest, or other people just dip out and go find another table, or the table as a whole gets bored and they want to play a different game now.
Well, as far as the gold thing goes, I'm feeling that was partly in jest. As you said, you're just going to keep throwing more gold at them, and here, hey, look, more shiny stuff, come get it. But even that will, over the period of a long campaign, even that would start to fall flat. Eventually, the characters wind up getting to the point that they're pretty much invincible. Nothing can touch them but old age. And what new thing can you throw at them? How much money? I've got too much of that filthy yellow stuff laying around here anyway. Done made myself a commode out of gold. What do you? Yeah, I know, right? And how do you go ahead and challenge those characters if they still want to play them? Have you ever played a character for so long that he was just no longer fun to play?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you how you do it.
Tell me what.
So what you actually have to do is you're shifting the genre of the drama, because when you start out in one of these games, it is the comedy of basically the common man. I mean, you're still above the common man in terms of what your capabilities are, but you're still the common man when it comes to being in an RPG experience. Once you get enough resources to where getting your plate mail isn't the thing that's driving you, or at least driving part of what you're trying to get done, then when you're comfortable when it comes to the resources that you have, then you kind of have to shift the genre to the tragedy of the nobleman. And so that a lot of that has to do with actually having your characters be invested with NPCs outside of the player group. You have to you have to put problems and challenges in front of people that Sword or Gold can't just instantly solve. And so you get into a lot of things that have more to do with, those choices that have to be made in life where they're not great choices either way, but a choice has to be made kind of things. And so it can become a lot less like, okay, like dragons and beholders and physical evils to the monster inside of people. And I know that sounds real philosophical and everything, but that's kind of where you go until
the most dangerous game of all.
Right. Well,
philosophy.
Yeah, until somehow you lose your position in being comfortable with what you have.
Well, I do have a character that I've played ever since 1994, and I no longer enjoy playing him at this point. He's fun to bring out and as an NPC and let people interact with, and now he's a staple of the world, etc., etc. And I get to do this because I get to invent the world. These are my rules. I get to make them up. But I've just found that he is less and less fun to play because of reasons. I would rather start over with something brand new that I've never done before and run that into the ground.
It's because of certainty. He's got too much certainty around him, right? So that's part of what happens. When we find certainty, we want a surprise, and when we have too much surprise in our life, we want some certainty. So it's standing between the two. Somewhere in between the two is what you're aiming at for each of the players at your table, especially if it's a long-term thing.
Oh, well, I've had the opposite problem as well. I've had people who would play a character for 8 levels or so, and then they would say, "Oh, I want to try something." Build another character, and they play that, and he gets up to level 5, and I want to go ahead and do something else, and then they play him to level 5, and they keep swapping characters, and then they start complaining, "How come we've never got up to level 9?" And I just want to look at them.
You do look at them.
Just stare them right in the face, and I don't even have for you. But I love them.
I was about to say there's a reason why most games don't get up all the way from 1 to 20. And some of that is fatigue from playing, but some of it too is it gets harder and harder as the GM to challenge the party when they get higher level. It's harder for the party to feel challenged, and you have to get really sort of crazy and over the top with the threats that are involved, which can be fun if you're going to super gonzo, but it can also be kind of a drag. And once you've saved the world, it's kind of how many times can I save the prime material plane? We've done it 3 times already.
Yeah, it looks to me like this place is trying to go away. Why am I stopping it?
That's it.
I got my pocket dimension. We're gone.
It's how many episodes of Justice League do you want to play?
Exactly. It's after the hour, so we've done our allotment. Are you guys cool to hang out for a little bit? I'm not sure. My family's gone. They're going to come back at some point, and then I'll have to bail. But I'm okay for chatting longer. What do you guys, Pex, Alan?
I'm here for just as long as I can be, I guess. I don't have anything big going on. Today's my day off.
Oh, rock on. So Datum, so tell me a little bit about yourself. You got all these interesting things to say about this. What do you do? You do something with organized play, you mentioned. What's your angle?
So, do not believe a word this man says. Go ahead, Datum.
I've been involved with RPGs in one form or another for about 20 years now. I ran 3rd edition in high school. My first RPG experience was actually a IRC RPG game that was around Mega Man, and I found that when Yahoo was still kind of like they were basically like tagging certain types of sites, and they were cataloging them basically. So I found I was, what is it? I was like a 11-year-old boy. So I'm like, oh, well, I like video games. So look up all the different video games and see what was out there. And that was one of the things I stumbled upon. And then I was like, what did I just do? And then I did some research on it. And then I found Dungeons and Dragons and Warhammer. And I liked Warhammer. Like, I liked the premise of it, but I was like, man, this is just way too expensive. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna read this book. And then I read 3rd edition core books, and then I was like, yeah, this is a lot. So I bought the 3rd edition starter set, and that's what I used to get some of my friends interested in playing. And I got a few other little supplements and stuff, and mostly just used stuff that I found on the internet. And I ran a campaign for 3 years in high school. And then after that, with gaming, I've been running a game at least every other week. I would say if you kind of smoothed everything out for the last 20 years. And now what I focus on is mostly RPG consulting and professional storytelling. And I actually just started doing daily YouTube comment at the beginning, daily YouTube content at the beginning of the week.
What do you mean by RPG consulting? Like how to build a game?
Well, Alan can tell you a little bit about that. VB can tell you a little bit about that. I basically just go out and I see people that are trying to build their markets, and I just talk to them about it. I don't do that professionally. I've never been paid to do that, but that's kind of the I would like to at some point. But I don't know. I don't know if it's actually I don't think it's really a money opportunity. I think it's more of a brand opportunity to be able to go and talk to people that have a product and they have put in considerable work, but they haven't really gotten their product to kind of a commercial level yet.
Nice. The commercial level is kind of a sliding scale.
Yeah.
There's not much barrier entry to actually getting something to be out there, but yeah, I often find a lot of things could use polish. And when I've done video reviews of different things, I run into that all the time. Or I'm reading through something, I'm like, yeah, this probably could have used another 1 or 2 editing runs or things like that. But I get it. These are individuals or small companies that are doing everything kind of out of their pocket. They don't have a lot of money to spend on sending things for editors or for doing more than rudimentary layout, and definitely things like fleshing things out. So you end up with a lot of stuff that kind of maybe not in the most polished, best way forward, but hey, you have to, sometimes you got to just, what they say, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You just got to get it out there and get it out. So you do that and you just live with it, and hopefully you get it better on the next try.
Yeah. Well, with editing, you really do need to pay a lot of attention to that, and much more. If you're the one that is doing your own editing, you're going to do a bad job because you've seen it a bunch of times. You've literally seen this more than anybody else has, and you no longer see the mistakes. I've had people offer to do editing for me, and I've gotten some of their examples. And what I've learned is that if you think that you're good at English, you're not. And that happens to be a sad truth. But they really do try. But the point is, everybody needs an editor, and you cannot have a mistake on every other page, because that's god awful. That's absolutely hideous. And your audience is going to know, and it's going to come a product.
Yeah. But
unless your name's Watsy, you're not going to get away with it.
Right. To Todd's point, nope. Totally lost it. I was going to say something. It's gone.
Thank you. That's another
right.
service I provide. It's free.
Thanks, Alan. But yeah, I guess where I am really with it is, and the people that I've worked with, the people that are trying to commercialize, that do have a price on what they are, it's kind of a mixed bag. Like with Alan, I bought his core book. I was like, you know what, this sounds good enough. 400 pages. What can go wrong? And so I put some money down on the table. But with other games, I've seen what people are doing, and I've talked to people, and I'm just like, well, I like this, but I want to give them more money than I have to give. So what I do is I test things. Like with Mythos Machine for Elthos, I've tested things. With Dungeons and Delvers, I tried to do some marketing for them, and well, sometimes you don't get enough traction to actually even put a play test together, which sucks. But it's like trying to go in and look at people's things and see what they have, no matter really what quality level they are, and try and put something together and play with it, because this is a really interesting kind of experience where you can tailor things. You can see kind of like core ideas of where people are trying to be different than what's going on in 5th edition or something like that. And it's cool to have the opportunity to do that. It's cool to give them some feedback. And it's also, it's like sometimes people ask me about like, marketing and that kind of thing. And I got some experience with that. So I give them the kind of advice that I can.
Nice. I mean, there's a lot of creators at different stages that could really use a lot of stuff. It's just like because I said I do these video looks, and I find a lot of stuff, and I'm like, this is just my live first pass. Forgetting reading it through a second time or a third time, and I'm finding tons of stuff. But yeah, as far as how to turn that into something to do professionally, it's difficult, because the guys that really need your help the most are the ones who are the least prepared to be able to pay for it, unless they somehow land a big Kickstarter or something. They don't have the money, and the ones that have the money probably already have an editor, and they're already kind of set up. So it's tough to find your space in there.
Well, the chicken and egg problem again.
It not really. I mean, I think that everybody, or well, I can't say everybody, but I think 99% of people have the wrong idea about this. With the professional storytelling, that's a direct service that is easier to say, okay, well, I'm going to work for you hourly, and this is the hourly rate, and blah blah blah. That's not hard. When it comes to the actual like consulting and brand building and marketing, and like not actually writing the marketing, just helping people with like marketing strategy and what's the thing that they should highlight about what differentiates their product and that kind of thing. That's, for me, that's all brand building, because now, what is it? I have Alan, I have VB, I have about 20 other people that, know who I am, what I do, and what I've been doing for the last 20 years. And that is growing my initial, social media base for my YouTube channel. So I think it is a lot more about just having perspective on what you're doing out there, and you can be doing things professionally that don't have dollars going back and forth.
Well, I have dollars going forth, I can tell you that.
Well, I know you do.
And I think what he was getting at is that whenever you're trying to do something new and you're trying to make, God forbid, a game system, which I would not recommend anybody do, but I support you if you're trying, is trying to get all these talents together, because you don't have them all. There's no way. You've only had so much life. And to do a really top quality product that's going to get noticed in an environment where you have mega corporations like Wizards et al. Doing things, you're going to need help of some kind. You cannot pull it all off, and you're going to have to bootstrap this some way. And people who don't know how to go and do a successful Kickstarter, hell, I don't even know how to do an unsuccessful Kickstarter, but I probably need to. Come in. Silverhand, you're clapping at me. Yeah, it's. I don't even know how to do an unsuccessful Kickstarter, much less a successful one. And there are that you could fill a book with the stuff that I don't know about this business and how to get things going, and they have lots of them. Yeah, it's just, how do you do that bootstrap? How do you find that way? And then they're confident enough to go out and just give it a shot. There are people that want everything to be handed to them already done, and that's never going to happen. And there are people who want to try, but they don't understand what they're doing wrong because they're not getting feedback. there's a veritable minefield, and it's a fun minefield if you kind of enjoy getting blown up and having a blast like you do in a minefield. We're having a minefield romp day. You guys want to join?
Having a blast in a minefield.
You can't just think that you're just gonna always succeed in every part of doing these businesses. Like,
why?
You, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm gonna take you out the woodshed later.
Woo! Don't threaten me with a good time.
That's right. But what do you call it? Yeah, just, well, like Alan was saying, it has to do with talent. But the thing, I guess the only real way to break out is that you have to do. I mean, you got to pex it, because Pex is here. I'm gonna use him as a verb. You have to do a bunch of stuff for no compensation other than being able to be part of the process and network with people that are already doing it. And if you're trying to do it any other way, like everybody's like, well, interns should be paid and blah blah blah. Before
they should be, but you can't afford that all the time.
Well, I don't know. Before I ventured more into the more creative stuff that I do, I was thinking about being an economics major in college, and I got into economics, and I found that, well, if I wanted a job that was something other than manufacturing reports that politicians wanted to hear, then I had to find a new major.
Economics degrees are very hard to get a solidified permanent job that pays.
Yeah. So I went the direction that was complete certainty, so I got a degree in entrepreneurship.
Exactly.
And
I too have found 500 ways that won't work.
Yeah, but that the reason I bring that up is just that the economics behind a lot of these things, there are a lot of pressures. There are a lot of political and legal pressures, and especially in the gaming industry, I've found it's just like everybody is wanting, well, I'm doing this work, so you should pay me, and blah blah blah. It's basically the internship and the apprenticeship part of how people learn to work and how people used to network and socialize and that kind of thing is completely gone. And it's been pushed out, and I think that really it's being pushed out of the what I want to call it, the more solidified, the more traditional business, and all of that stuff is just in social media now. All of it. All the internships and apprenticeships that you can possibly find are in the social media and are like gaming social media space. And they've just pushed it out of these traditional businesses. And what's going to happen is these traditional businesses are going to hollow themselves out, and they're just going to fall right over. And that I think I see that happening right now.
Well,
I mean, it's very. Go ahead, Alan. You've been wanting to chime in there.
Yeah, I've tried a couple of times. It's all right. Well, I would say that it seems that things are moving. I mean, some of us have read Who Moved Cheese, and a little bitty cute book about mice, and they always had this cheese store, and it kept dwindling and dwindling and dwindling, and nobody ever looked for any more sources of food. And finally, one day, all the cheese was gone, and instead of saying, "Oh my God, now what do we do?" This well that they kept going back to for food, they said, "Who moved my cheese? It was right here." And they didn't see that it was constantly drying up. And I think we need to start looking at that as a possibility. The people that you were talking about, Datum, that were looking for traditional ways of doing things, well, tradition is tradition until it's no longer viable, and we usually quit doing that and move to something else. And if the resources you're talking about have moved to social media now, then these companies that refuse to change with the times get exactly what they deserve.
To be honest, there aren't enough dollars floating around, and everybody looks to WotC. There's plenty of money. Like, no, that's just WotC. A lot of people in this industry are underpaid. I do about 10 different jobs, technically, different job titles, technically. I don't get paid for 10 different job titles, not near. And everybody wears multiple hats, and the base value for what you're paid is very, very low. We're not doing this because we expect to get tons of money or get rich. If you want to make $2 million in the gaming industry, you start with 3. I don't think we're there yet. There's more gamers now than there has ever been. This is true, but we don't have what I would equate to video game success. It's not there. And we see Kickstarters doing millions and millions of dollars, sure, but there's cost to those. And people don't realize all the costs that go in versus the profit. And it's very much since we're talking about economics, a very economical thing. Your costs are tremendous. And artists don't get paid as much as they should either. New order writers make pennies a word, honestly. I think the average industry standard's 3 cents a word or something like that. It's ridiculous, and that's an average. There's some people pay much lower than that too. It's a hard knock life. If I wanted to do the same job, and make money, I would be in a different business than RPGs, honestly.
Well, and as I'm getting paid no cents a word right now, 3 cents a word sounds like that's lavish. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I'm sorry. My girlfriend was saying something quick, but the economics to me just isn't about like dollars. It's definitely economics of action, and the idea that I really just think that the creative energy is flowing away from all these businesses, and some of it, one of the things that she said, Alan, is like that businesses aren't doing this and aren't doing that. Well, what I see is that they would probably do the best thing for their business if they weren't forced to do other things.
That's exactly how Sega went out of business, doing what was best for the business. They turned a profit every year until the last year that they were making consoles. And they tanked hard, and everybody that wasn't Sega saw it coming 3 years away.
Right. Well, that's just in that specific situation, that just seems to be they knew what they were on a path to do, and they had the what's the word? They were optimistic about what they can do and how they could succeed, and they just got ran over by a Microsoft truck. And that's kind of, we could see it, but them as a business, and there's probably momentum. They probably already have things designed and in production, and basically they're just ramping up marketing and getting some software written and that kind of thing. And that's I don't know if it could be any different. Like I said, I think businesses would do what would be best for their business for the long term, except for in 2 situations. Either they're trying to get out of the business, or they don't have the ability for social, legal, whatever reasons to do the things that are best for their business that's going to sustain the business.
Well, it's hard to argue that you're running your business into the ground whenever you are turning a profit every single quarter. But They managed. And if they can do it, seriously, if they can do it, somebody else can do it too. So that might be a hard thing to see coming. What would be the flag for that? Because I think we all need to keep something like that very much in mind. You're able to kill your brand with very little effort. And you might want to be cognizant of that.
But see, they didn't build their brand. They just they had to leverage their brand in a different way. And they still license Sonic. They just made shoot, I'm trying to remember what it's called. Sonic Mania.
Well, Sonic Mania wasn't the end of it. Now, you're right, that was a terrible game, but what they had was two different people arguing and fighting, Sega of Japan versus Sega of America, and Sega of America was doing a bang-up job, but they didn't want to do the things that the Americans said to do, and the people in Japan made a series of really poor decisions that still allowed them to turn a profit, and they did not see the truck coming until they'd been ran over.
And I'll equate it to our ugly sister cousin, the board gamers. We saw the board game boom. Lots of people were doing, hey, this is really, really cool. Mm-hmm. And box sets are very, very difficult to do. And a lot of those indies aren't around anymore. Because either, they were getting into business for the first time, and B, they discovered that board games are not profitable.
Well, and physical, what do you call it, gaming things, I mean, you can only have so many. I mean, unless you have just a 20-car garage that's empty that you can just pack with those boxes of games. At some point, you're gonna run out of space, and really the only ones that anybody's gonna have now, instead of it just being like Monopoly and Clue and Risk, it's gonna be like and Trivial Pursuit, of course. It's going to be like there's going to be 10 games in that stack instead of 4, and it's like, are you going to be one of the top 6 games that people actually play?
Right, and the point I didn't mention that I was trying to hone in on, you can't just do what's cool all the time either. There's a balancing act between profitability and cool stuff. I mean, we had Frogs. We do projects just because. Doesn't mean we're going to make a whole lot of money off of it. Mm-hmm. Then we make things that we know are going to make a lot of money, and because we have a production line and we lots of math, we figured out how to make that balance, and I think that's a struggle for any company, is finding that balance.
Well, if you're doing what's cool instead of making cool, that is an issue.
Yeah, you're already behind by definition, right?
Yeah, and it's like, yes, you want to do some things that like this project is more than likely going to be profitable, but that can't be your whole business, or else you'll never get on the edge of things where all the money's made, like all the like 10x like big successes are.
We're figuring out where things are going to be. Now that's the trick. Wayne Gretzky said he doesn't go to where the puck is; he goes to where the puck is going to be. And that's the thing that I wish I could see ahead.
Well, there's plenty of talk around like where everything is going when it comes to just the world in general, but also entertainment. And there's some people that are like, this will be the downfall of the human race. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I mean, maybe to some people, but there's still people out there. I don't know about you, but I'm in a little town surrounded by lots of women making little babies. I don't think we're going to go extinct anytime soon.
There you go.
And then chat goes quiet as everyone contemplates their personal Armageddon.
Well, no one likes babies, so
no.
Yeah, they're loud, they stink, they make horrible noises, and they do to you. If you had an adult do to you one thing that your baby has had do to you, you'd punch him right in the mouth.
See, it's the reason. It's the reason that Willow wasn't so successful, because it had a baby as a main character. Just how it goes.
Hey,
the baby was not a main character.
What?
Let's
Get
clear
out
that up. The baby was a prop.
The baby was the ring.
Yeah,
no, see, that's the thing is, this is what I'm learning from social media. Sometimes you just have to say things that are going to get people to say things, and that was one of them. So you're welcome.
You mean say something absolutely wild and
right?
Still walk the line and don't fall over into, yeah, we're going to edit that out.
Right.
Well, guys, I got to get going, so I'm going to put up my links here and then take off.
Yep, I think I got a jet too. Besmirching Willow's a good way to end the program. So let's let's wrap it up. Pex, drop your stuff in the chat, and Alan, drop your stuff in the chat, and then I will kill Craig. And thank everybody for hanging out for a few hours on a Sunday morning. I know it could be tough, but appreciate it.
Die, Craig, die. Here we go. Here's my carp. I will put that up and then drop another thing of my upcoming release. This is probably the closest to final rendition of this cover as I have. Maybe. Most certainly, I might possibly revise it again. But this is where it is now. So I look forward to having that out for everybody. I look forward to having everybody come and buy it, like 1 million copies. That'd be great. Or just 3, however. And I will thank you forever, and it will be awesome times. That's not my best pitch, but that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. Pex, you drop your stuff in?
Yeah, I already did.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll talk to you next time. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and take it easy. Talk to you later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.